Welcome, and thank you very much, and my apologies for our late start. Uh, the leadership in the House doesn't know that this is inconvenient for some of us, and they schedule votes and things in the middle of things sometimes that are more important. But nevertheless, we're here. Let me welcome Councilor Cardenas. Other members will be coming in as we just finished voting, and they'll be coming in to be part of this. And as they come in, we'll give them an opportunity for some comments. Today's forum and discussion, and I want to welcome all the panelists and thank you so much for being here. Looking forward to your comments and welcome you here. Ostensibly, it's around a piece of legislation, the repeal of Section 3003 that was in the National Defense Authorization, that was a must-pass piece of legislation that the president signed, and within that was Section 303, which expedited the land transfer in Arizona. And in the process of expediting that, created the situation at Oak Flats, which now essentially, as that trade moves forward, becomes private land, inaccessible, and to many, in particular the Native people nationally, and San Carlos Apache tribe in particular, saw this as a serious violation of sacred sites, and more importantly, as a desecration of a sacred site with ancestral connections that go back millennium. And so we felt that because of the way it was done in the middle of the night to put that there and move forward, that we would give it an opportunity to have our colleagues join with us, and many of us have, to move to repeal of that section within the authorization, the defense authorization. Number one, that's ostensibly where we're at. But I think many of you hear from today will be particular to Oak Flats, but I think there's some bigger issues at stake here in terms of what this means to Indian country, in terms of sacred sites, and what it means to protect Native American religious and sacred sites as a whole. The Graves, Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, American Indian Religious Freedom Act, the National Historic Preservation Act, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, Executive Order 13175, consultation with Indian tribal governments, Executive Order 13007, Indian sacred sites. All those have an impact on this issue as a whole, and for many individuals across Indian country, and many and tribal leadership across Indian country see this as a very, very dangerous precedent going into the future, and have rallied to support Oak Flat and the people that are fighting that issue. I want to say also that as we go forward, and you hear the testimony today, that I think that it's also crystallized something very important. The role in, people give a lot of lip service to self-determination and sovereignty and on and on and on. But in reality, when we have these kinds of very trades to a foreign-owned mining company, multinational corporation that affects the direct descendant history of this nation in a very direct and personal and spiritual and sacred way, that we do that at the expense of our own legacy as a nation and our own values as a nation. So this is an opportunity for many of us, not only in Congress, to come to grips with this issue. And as we go forward, make sure that the federal laws and policies designed to protect Native American religious and sacred areas and sites are upheld, are respected, and given the status in any discussion. So with that, let me ask.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. In the interest of brevity, I don't want to repeat some of the facts and issues that you pointed out that are so pertinent to this hearing. I'd like to stay as long as I can to hear from the panel. I just want to thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this today. And it's wonderful to be in the room with so many leaders of nations. And I just want to remind all of you that I want to be consistent in my representation of all people in this country. And the first Americans have suffered tremendous abuses. Our children read about it in history books, but the abuses unfortunately still go on today, and they repeat themselves in more ways than one. And when it comes to this particular sacred site that we're talking about today, as was mentioned by the chairman, the ranking member, I just want to let you know that this is an injustice to one site, and an injustice to one site or one sovereign nation just leads to many, many, many more. So this is about not only about this site, but it's about precedent and about taking a stand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. And let me, the co-chair of the Native American Caucus here in the House of Representatives and strong advocate and leader on Native American issues and a voice of strength on those issues as well. And we're very gratified and happy to have her here with us. And with that, let me introduce Congresswoman McCollum.
Thank you, Ranking Member. I hope one day to say Mr. Chair. But I'm very pleased to be here with one of the vice chairs in the Native American Caucus, my good friend, and I do mean that, Mr. Grijalva. And it is good to have another strong voice in Indian country, Mr. Cardenas, here with us, as well as many others. It's important that we keep a spotlight in this issue in Congress. So I want to thank San Carlos Apache Chairman Terry Rambler. You have worked tirelessly to defend Oak Flats for your nation, for your people, and I think for all people who care about this issue. And so I'm very proud to stand with you on this issue. As the ranking member pointed out, a great injustice was done when this giveaway of holy and protected place was snuck, literally snuck in the dead of night into last year's National Defense Reauthorization Act. And that came after 2 failed attempts to pass this as a standalone bill on the House floor. We had defeated it twice. Removing this site from the protections offered on federal lands will lead to the destruction of a sacred site for the Apache people at the hands of a foreign-owned mining company. Tribal nations from across the United States oppose this bill because of the blatant disregard it showed for the Native American people, our brothers and sisters, for their cultural sites and for their places of worship. So today, we gather together to call out this wrong. Today, we witness the gathered are the lifting the voices of all tribal nations who are fighting to preserve their sacred spaces, to protect their history and their ongoing cultural practices. You know that you have allies in this struggle, in your fellow Americans, who stand to protect our public lands from the assault of foreign companies, who stand for the protection of religious liberty for all of our brothers and sisters. So we must fix the shameful betrayal and reestablish that this Congress honors its commitment to protecting religious freedoms for tribal nations. Rebecca Taylor from my staff is going to say, I'm not going to mention which tribal nations are coming to my office for a minute, but I know they're with you in solidarity, but I am returning to work on other important issues in my office with many of the tribal nations here. And the words of some of my leaders, strong women leaders from Ojibwe, Miigwech.
Thank you very much. And before we proceed, and as other members come in, we're going to begin with the panel. I think that having this discussion on the record and having the public acknowledgement of this discussion and the panelists and witnesses that we have today is very important. We want to get to that right away. As I say that, I said, but first, we have some petitions that have, before you leave, Betty and Tony. Yeah, I want to thank Avaz Center for Biological Diversity, and particularly Avaz for their fine international effort at getting petitions of support. And Credo Action, Sierra Club, and the Arizona Mining Reform Coalition we're going to receive them here because the inconvenience of sitting here and getting petitions.
Okay.
Right by those, right? Yeah, almost.
So my name is Nick Kimbrell, and I work with the Global Civic Advocacy Organization of Oz. And the Oz community believes that Oak Flat should be protected, not plundered. And I'm here as a representative of over 1 million people, including nearly 200,000 in the U.S., who are calling on Congress to do the right thing, and that is to act to stop this act of cultural vandalism and to set a strong precedent for governments everywhere that native peoples and their sacred sites must be protected. So on behalf of 1,085,517 people across the world, nearly 200,000 here in the U.S., thank you. Thank you very much.
I am Randy Spivak with the Center for Biological Diversity, and very proud that our organization also stands with the San Carlos Apache and all of their work to protect the sacred site. In addition to the million, and nearly 200,000 in the U.S. that we've gathered, and just want to make the point that not only is this, with this one destroy cultural and sacred sites for Apaches and the people, also our public lands and wildlife habitat, touches the main waters in the west, and that needs to be stopped. And we will succeed, and I'm confident of that with your leadership. I think the fact that we have well over 1 million people demonstrates that this is not just a county issue, it's not just a Western issue, it's an American issue, it's an international issue. And with that kind of awareness, when people hear what's going on, they really get angry. And when people get angry, we can change.
I'm Ethan Mendes, here, so just to echo what everyone else said, it's great to be here with such a great chance, especially from the nations in Arizona, who talking about this issue, but we just shouldn't be privatizing public land in Congress, so we shouldn't be privatizing sacred spots for our Native American brothers and sisters in Arizona. And I thought, and we thought as a nation we were ready, we would stop turning these sacred places that Native Americans care about so much, and we should be better as a country. So we're happy to commit to this fight, stick with these great allies and great chance. And like Randy said, if we're persistent, we will right this wrong, and we return this land to the American public and to the tribes in Arizona who deserve to continue to celebrate their traditions on this great state.
I'm Roger Featherstone, director of the Arizona Mining Reform Coalition, with a little over 5,000 petitions, and we've all stood strong together for the last decade fighting this. We will continue to do so as long as it takes, and we of course fully support the protection of Oak Flat and the sacredness and stopping of this disaster.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you.
As other members come in. As other members come in, then we'll acknowledge them and finish whatever testimony a person is giving or answering a question, and then allow that member to make comments. Let me begin, and welcome to all of you. I know it's always fun to come to Washington and sit around in hearing rooms. Let me begin by introducing and asking the Honorable Paulette Jordan, member of the Idaho House of Representatives. Ms. Jordan is a native and lifelong resident of Idaho, and Secretary of the National Indian Gaming Association. She has served 3 years as the youngest elected member of her nation, tribal nation, and also as within the House of the Idaho House of Representatives. She leadership from Native country and providing that at a national level and within her own community. It's an honor to have you here. Secretary Jordan, and the floor is yours. You have to push that little button. Yeah. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Ranking Member Grijalva, and thank you, Congressman Cardenas, for being here. I also wish to thank my sister and dear friend, Betty McCollum, and appreciate her remarks as well. Yes, my name is Paulette Jordan. I'm a citizen of the Coeur d'Alene Tribe. I also come as a secretary of the National Indian Gaming Association, and I also serve as the Idaho House representative of North Idaho. Before I begin, I want to send the regards of my chairman, Ernie Stevens, who sends his regrets that he's unable to join us this afternoon. He and I were able to join the rally, and so this is a great cause in his heart, so he's here in spirit. But we have a mid-year conference in Florida, so he's pretty fortunate to be there in the sun, and but yet he also wanted to share his regards because he wants to be here as well. So we have a distinguished panel here. I don't want to take up too much time, and I'm going to read my prepared remarks for the record. In so doing, I want to thank you for this vitally important opportunity to speak about the need to protect the Native American, protect Native American religions and the fight to protect sacred oak flag. Some may ask why the National Indian Gaming Association is interested in this issue. Our answer is simple. This issue is about tribal sovereignty and the dignity of Native Americans. NIGA's core principles and mission are to protect tribal sovereignty and preserve Indian gaming as a means of attaining economic self-sufficiency. In 2015, NIGA celebrates its 30th year. Over the past 3 decades, Indian gaming has proven time and time again that it is truly the Native American success story. Today, more than 240 tribes employ gaming to help revitalize Native nations. Indian gaming revenues are used to improve Native health care, education, and rebuild community infrastructure. Just as important, Indian gaming is helping replenish our homelands, foster our traditions and languages, and preserve our cultures and way of life, which is wholly valuable to our people. In the past, the federal policies of allotment that you're so well aware of, the Assimilation Act, the Termination Act, and relocation sought to destroy Native religion and our languages. Yet today, Indian gaming is helping preserve our culture. We're very proud of that. This past summer, Chairman Stevens and I, we attended the rally to save Oak Flat on the U.S. Capitol grounds. And it was such an honor to see so many people, both young and old, gather united to protect our way of life. Today we bear witness and we honor who we are as a people and where we come from. Our native songs and dances have survived so many challenges in the history of this country. And by carrying on these traditions, we carry on the voices of our ancestors. We also embrace the confidence of our young leaders who carry on this message and our traditions. And you'll see our young sister here, and she is part of that legacy of ours. While we've made great progress in preserving our cultures and ways of life, much work remains to be done to educate the American public about who we are as a people. In the year 2015, it is disappointing that some in Congress ignore the need to protect the civil rights and the religious rights of Native Americans. The great Dr. Martin Luther King, as he fought for the equality of all Americans, reminded us of the damage done by the United States to the Native Americans. In his 1963 book, Why We Can't Wait, Dr. King condemned the injustices inflicted on Native Americans. He wrote, "Our nation was born in genocide. We are perhaps the only nation which tried as a matter of national policy to wipe out its indigenous population." Dr. King wrote those words more than 50 years ago today. However, in light of these recent actions, it seems that we must all reawaken America's conscience to honor the dignity of every race. This includes the right of Native Americans to practice our religions and forever access our sacred places. That we have protected since time immemorial. In December of 2014, all of Indian country was dealt a setback with the midnight passage of the Southeast Arizona Land Exchange. The land exchange poses a threat to the religious practice of the Apaches, our sister nation, and other tribes in the region. The exchange transfers these sacred lands to a foreign-owned mining corporation that will decimate the lands and waters, an issue that we are all wholly aware of, especially as representatives of our state and our constituents. The Obama administration has acknowledged that the vast majority of federal lands are carved out of the ancestral homelands of Indian tribes. As a result, the administration acknowledged the concerns of the Apache people and testified in opposition to this land exchange. However, despite this opposition, and the opposition of hundreds of tribal governments, the land exchange was deceptively attached to the must-pass National Defense Bill. This action sets a dangerous precedent for all of Indian country and indicates a return to past policies that disregarded our rights. In the 20th century, the United States too often ignored its treaty and trust obligations to Indian country, both on tribal lands and on federal lands that encompass our sacred places and where we exercise our treaty rights. During this period, our lands were open to industry without our input. Corporations repeatedly took what they wanted and left our people and our children with poisoned lands and waters, many of which to this day have yet to be cleaned. Because of these actions, there are more than 500 Superfund sites that exist today on Indian lands, with countless more on federal lands that encompass our sacred places. And I am one victim of the Superfund site in North Idaho of the Coeur d'Alene tribe, and I can testify today that, yes, it has decimated our waters, and it will take hundreds of years to be cleaned. We had thought that those days have passed, and that the policy of Indian self-determination and respect for Native culture would prevent such destruction. However, with this Midnight Rider that authorized the South Arizona Land Exchange, a dangerous precedent has been set for all of Indian country. Protecting sacred Native lands from desecration and destruction is vital to the continued protection of our religions and our way of life. I testify before you today as a woman, and most importantly, a mother. In our tradition, Mother Earth is the original life giver. She has a vital role in the universe, as do we. Just as we would expect that no woman be violated, we have the same expectation for Mother Earth, which provides sustenance to us all to live. I want to close, my friends, my relatives here today, with this Cree proverb. Our elders are so sacred and holy to us. They have so much wisdom, and that wisdom still carries on to this day. This Cree proverb says that only when the last tree has died, the last river has been poisoned, the last fish been caught, will we realize that we cannot eat money. My mentors, elders, they tell me that this dollar is not the Almighty. The only Almighty is God. We have to remind ourselves of that. And again, I want to thank you for this opportunity and ask that you work in cooperation to repeal this land exchange and save the Save Oak Flat Act. And wish that on behalf of my people, my relatives, and the association. I thank you. Lim limsh. Cha wun sha tsach. See.
The Honorable Brian Patterson, thank you, President of the United South and Eastern Tribes Incorporated, for decades working and dedicating himself to the cultural and historic revitalization of his people and Native cultures and tribal cultures throughout this country. He is a leader in Indian country, and we are glad that he was able to be with us today. And sir, the floor is yours.
Representative Parava, greetings, Representative Cadnes. Good afternoon. What a special time it is to hear the voice of humanity resonate throughout the world on an issue so dear, so impactful, with such passion and commitment in dedicating that voice to the preservation of the Apache way of life, the universe in which the Apache view the world. How special is that? I take recognition of those voices from around the world. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to sit with my colleague, my friend, the Honorable Chairman Terry Rambler, his council, and the Apache people. I am most grateful for the time allowed to me to stand beside them in the strength of unity, in a show of passion and commitment to fight to protect Oak Flat and, by extension, all sacred sites throughout America. My name is Brian Patterson, and I serve as President of the United South and Eastern Tribes. I also serve my people as Bear Clan representative for the Oneida Indian Nation. While time limitations do not afford a proper introduction as a coordinates in our ways of life, which is the Gonohela Duxla, the opening Thanksgiving address, which is recited anytime we gather ourselves, in which in the Haudenosaunee way of life is referred to as a Thanksgiving address. I offer, however, the spirit and intent of that address today. It is our central prayer, our central invocation that reflects our unique relationship of giving thanks to life in the world around us. It is our ancient message of peace, power, righteousness, our appreciation of Mother Earth and all its relation. The Thanksgiving address teaches us mutual respect, conservation, love, generosity, and the responsibility to understand that what is done to one part of life reflects and echoes in the web of life in its entirety. What we do to Mother Earth, we do to ourselves. As we engage in this dialogue on the most critical issue of sacred sites, it is important that we do so and have our voices heard as America's first people from a place of respect, a place of peace and protection for those who no longer can speak for themselves, our ancestors who've gone before us. As we sit here before you, we represent thousands and thousands of years of the blood and the legacy of our ancestors who've gone on before us. The United South and Eastern Tribes is an intertribal organization representing 26 federally recognized tribes from Texas to Florida and up to Maine. The USET tribal nations are within the eastern region of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Southern Plains region of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and the Nashville area of the Indian Health Service, covering a large expanse of land compared to other regions. Due to this large geographic area, the United South and Eastern Tribes have a great diversity in our cultural traditions, our holdings, and resources in representing our ancient lifeways. While the practice of spiritual and ceremonial traditions and beliefs vary significantly amongst our USET tribes, as well as the 567 tribal nations of the United States, our spirituality is overwhelmingly place-based. By example, last week we were with the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. In their homelands, they shared with us Nania Waia mounds, the sacred mounds. All the way, we addressed the sacredness of our homelands from Mississippi Band of Choctaw up to the landscapes of New England within our Aboriginal homelands. Each USET tribe has specific places and location that we consider sacred. These places are often the sites of our origin, our stories, our sites of creation. As such, we believe that we have been in these places since time immemorial. The dust and bones of our ancestors resonate throughout our homelands. Through these sites, we are linked to our spirituality, the practice of our religions, and to the foundations. The very root of our people is exemplified through our cultural beliefs and values. Our sacred sites are of greatest importance, and they hold the bones and spirit of our ancestors, and we must ensure their protection, for it is our sacred duty. As one of the core principles and building blocks, this nation was built upon the premise of religious freedom. As our federal partner in this unique government-to-government relationship, the United States possesses a unique trust responsibility, a unique moral obligation of the highest order to us as the original and free sovereign nations that predate the formation of this country by thousands of years. This includes the protection of our ancient sacred sites. In fact, there are numerous laws, as you reflected, executive orders, court cases that confirm our right as Native people to practice our beliefs and our traditions within our holy places. According to the American Indian Religious Freedom Act, this includes access to sites, use and possession of sacred objects, and the freedom to worship through ceremonial and traditional rites. In addition, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which the United States endorsed in 2010, contains numerous articles affirming our rights to maintain and protect and have access and privacy to these religious and cultural sites. However, in the case of Oak Flat and other religious sites, our great nation of the United States is failing to live up to its duty. For more than 10 years, Congress considered and rightly rejected legislation titled the Southeast Arizona Land Exchange and Conservation Act. As this legislation was introduced time and time again, USET joined hundreds of tribal nations and organizations across the country in passing resolutions and standing in advocacy against the injustices of this proposal. USET slogan and governing principle is strength in unity. In face of the prospect of giveaway and subsequent desecration of a site sacred to the San Carlos Apache and the Yavapai Apache peoples, Indian country was united in strong opposition. And thank you, Representative Harava, for coming in support of that most recent demonstration in the shadows of the Capitol this past summer. Yet, in spite of this clear message of disapproval, congressional supporters of the land exchange, each with a trust responsibility and obligation to tribal nations, forced a closed door to attach it to a must-pass piece of legislation at the very end of the 113th Congress. The National Defense Act, NDAA, Section 3003, and the NDAA provides for a mandatory transfer of Oak Flat, lands that contain Apache holy beings, ancient settlements, and burial sites to foreign corporations, right? There's more than one, that will profit from its destruction. In addition to causing irreparable harm to the Apache people, the conveyance of these lands sets such a great, dangerous precedent for all of Indian country. I stand here before you today in unity with the Apache people and to take a stand against the destruction and denigration of our sacred places through the actions or the inactions of the United States government. I ask each member of Congress present, as well as each member of the House Committee on Natural Resources, to consider their own religious traditions, their own places of worship. Would you, any of you, accept the desecration of your holy ground, your ancient way of life? Would any of you sit idly as the bones and spirit of your ancestors are disturbed and destroyed in the name of metal extraction and corporate profit? This June, Ranking Member Haralva and Ruiz, along with co-chairs of the House Native American Affairs Caucus and numerous members of Congress presented here, introduced H.R. 2811, the Save Oak Flat legislation, and would see to it that this unconscionable land exchange never happens. For that, our hearts are most grateful to you in those efforts. On behalf of the United South and Eastern Tribes, 26 member tribal nations, I wish to extend my strong and unqualified support to this legislation for immediate repeal of Section 3003 of the NDAA. I urge the House Natural Resource Committee to immediately take up H.R. 2811 and the full U.S. Congress to ensure swift passage. Indian country will not stand by as the very foundations of our culture, our ancient ways of life, are demolished in the interest of greed and profit. Once again, I extend my heartfelt gratitude on behalf of 26 tribal nations of the USET family. I would like to thank the House Committee on Natural Resources as well as the Apache people for allowing me to speak on this critical issue of importance. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Before I introduce Chairman Rambler, was brought to our attention on the Senate side, Senator Sanders from Vermont, Senator Heinrich from New Mexico, and hopefully others will be introducing companion legislation to the one in the House, which now gives us two parallel vehicles to be able to work with, and that is a good thing to do. And all that to no small effort on the part of the people that are before me today. Thank you very much. And in particular, let me introduce Chairman Rambler, Chairman of the San Carlos Apache Tribe since 2010, on the council, Tribal Council since 2004. He's currently President of the Intertribal Council of Arizona and Chairman of the Arizona Indian Gaming Association. My pleasure to introduce Chairman Rambler, and my pleasure to work with him. And let me thank him at the outset. You know, here in Congress we do a lot of crazy things, you know, and something that makes sense to people, and justifiably it doesn't make sense sometimes. But, you know, I want to thank Chairman Rambler because it's been a steady, calm, strong. We're going to keep doing this till we change minds and turn this around, and I very appreciative for that leadership. Chairman, floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Ranking Member Grijalva, and I was going to say members of the committee. My name is Terry Rambler, Chairman of the San Carlos Apache Tribe. Thank you for this opportunity to testify on the need to protect Native American religions and the fight to save Oak Flat. I also want to thank you for holding this forum to shed light on the deceptive process that led to the authorization of the Southeast Arizona Land Exchange and the urgent need to repeal the authorization by approving the Save Oak Flat Act. Oak Flat is a holy site and an area of irreplaceable beauty. Apache people have lived, prayed, and died in the Oak Flat area since the time our Creator placed us here. The Apaches, like most indigenous people around the world, are tied deeply to our ancestral lands. Our Apache word for this world is Nigostan, which means the earth is a woman. We don't mean this symbolically, we mean it literally and physically. We are taught that the oceans, springs, and rivers are her cardiovascular system. The rich and fertile soil is her skin. The grass, herbs, and trees are her hair. We live on her, with her, and we respect her. We are part of her, her children. Our Creator placed us here in the place He chose for us. For many in my family and other Apache families, that place is the area that includes Oak Flat. We are tied to our lands, and we cannot leave them. For countless generations, our mothers have buried our umbilical cords in the earth to tie us to the land of our birth. We can't bear to be separated from our land, the place in which our Creator placed us. Living on our land with our families is more important to us Native people than any career or job opportunity. That's why few tribal members leave, even though life can be hard on the reservation. We need to stay as close as possible to our ancestral lands. Since we are not going anywhere, we are bound to protect these places, places like Oak Flat. Our Apache support system is in the land. Our traditional Apache institutions are not buildings or legal statutes or governmental bodies. Our institutions are in nature, in the natural world. We follow the natural laws. Our traditional economy is based on living within the natural rhythm of the earth, seasonally following the wild foods and planting our farms, using only what we need and living always with prayer and thanks. Our native economy demands that we leave the land natural and healthy for our future generations. Our traditional manners and customs are modeled after proper behavior towards our animal relatives and respect to everyone. The Apaches' prayers, healing sites, and ceremonial grounds are not churches or doctors' offices. They are springs, meadows, caves, cliffs, and natural places. Our homelands contain these places, or what is left of them. The Oak Flat area contains many such places, places that must remain intact for Apaches to receive healing and balance. I have a photo here of the Oak Flat area and an ancient oak tree that has nourished the Apache people for centuries with its acorns. It takes 40 years to produce the first acorn from these trees. These trees will be destroyed when the land collapses. Many of these places are discussed in detail in the recently completed ethno-historic survey of the area. The proposed resolution mine threatens to erode our ever-disappearing traditional lands and to further compromise our natural support system. The 4 Apache reservations in Arizona occupy less than 1/3 of our traditional home territory. Acre by acre, our traditional lands, food and medicine gathering areas, prayer and ceremonial sites, and clan origin places are being taken over by urban development and industrial expansion. When they are paved over, turned into open copper mining pits or block cave craters, they are gone forever. This proposed mine at Oak Flat will devour even more of our sacred lands and leave nothing in these places for anyone in the future. After the mine is played out, the promised jobs will evaporate. The workers will leave and travel to the next mine or go on unemployment. And the profits will be stashed in bank accounts around the world. We will be the ones left to survey the destruction of the places closest to our hearts and to tell our great-grandchildren about their shattered birthright. Our second major concern is the loss of water in the region, contamination of the water that remains, and our water rights. One of the purposes for establishing the Tonto National Forest in 1905 was to protect the watersheds and the quality of the water. This bill undermines that purpose. The mining project will require at least 20,000 acre-feet of water annually to keep the mine from flooding. This equates to the water supply for 180,000 Arizona citizens each year. According to a recent study, this massive groundwater pumping would not be sustainable and will forever damage the region's water supply and threaten surface water resources. I have here a picture of a perennial spring at Oak Flat. Mining here will contaminate and dry up the spring and other water sources at Oak Flat. We believe in future economic development based on sound traditional Apache principles of ecological sustainability. Our traditional culture is based on living in a way that respects our Creator's earth and keeps it natural and vital. 20 years ago, a soft-spoken elder from my hometown of Mabilis posed this question to one of our white employees. With all of your education and all of your science, why can't you white people learn how to make a living to be happy without destroying the earth? He couldn't come up with an answer. We want you to work with us and learn from Apaches and other native people how we can help our economy thrive without destroying our sacred lands forever. But first, we want your help in helping to protect one of these sacred sites, Oak Flat, right now before it is gone forever. In closing, I urge everyone in this room to continue to shine light on the deception that was used to authorize the land exchange and the damage that will occur if it moves forward. By repealing the midnight approval of the land exchange, the Save Oak Flat will protect Native American religions and our sacred grounds. It will preserve clean drinking water for our region and for future generations, and it will defend the voice of the hundreds of thousands of Americans who stood in opposition to this giveaway of American resources. I urge all members of Congress to support the Save Oak Flat Act and work to move this bill to final passage. May God watch over you and give you guidance. Thank you.
Winsler Nosey, Honorable Winsler Nosey. My friend and current district council member and former chairman of the San Carlos Apache tribe. He's led the Apache stronghold to D.C. to protest the middle of the night, sneaky, underhanded way in which it was placed in the National Defense Authorization Act, and which, when the sacred site of Oak Flat was sacrificed, and he has been consistent about this issue. We've been chipping at this rock for quite a while, and but I think through it all, complete faith in the result, and the result will be for us to win. And with that, let me introduce and give the floor to my friend. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Grijalva. First of all, let me just say, I want to thank the Creator for bringing me here again. I can recall the days of the doors not opening. I can recall the days of me seemed to be carrying a disease here to Congress to not want to hear the truth about what was happening back in Arizona. I want to give blessings to those who lend an open ear to hear the future of this country, of all of us, and what was most important. So again, I want to sit here and thank you and thank all the people around this country and around the world for their tremendous effort in believing in faith and hope and believing in the Creator that things can be changed. You know, my testimony here is a little different than the leaders that sit here today, because my testimony comes across Indian country as well as America and as well as the world. This fight has led me to believe and see clearly that it is not only a Native American fight. It's an Arizona fight, it's a USA fight, and now it's a world issue. Coming from the Apaches, my mother, who was raised by her grandmother, who was brought in as a prisoners of war to the concentration camp known as Hell's Hole 40, and eventually becoming Old San Carlos and becoming San Carlos, knew what was freedom, knew who she was until she was forced. Then giving birth to her son, George Ward, to live a life of not knowing who he was and what he was to be, and living in this concentration camp. Then giving birth to my mother, Elvira, to begin to live a life of our children being plucked to be elsewhere and to be assimilated into this country. And then I come in a world that my mother kept me close to her, to not allow the outside see me, only because I would be removed from the reservation. Until my daughter Vanessa comes in her life, and being at a grocery store in Globe, Arizona, and me telling her to stay beside me and no go wander off, and her arguing with me, why? These white people can walk around me. Why do you want me to remove myself? Not knowing that I was carrying the same disease my mother was carrying, until that late night discussing with her the event that took place. 2 days later, my mother calling me back, who is now 88 years old, tells me and apologizes and cries to me and tells me, son, I am sorry. Your daughter is right. We've been pushed around too long. We've been told not to do this or do that and no longer go back to places that we come from. This is wrong. Why is it different for us? So what that came to view or to the forefront was the fact that we carry post-war syndromes. And it's really unethical for our own congresspeople, our senator in the state of Arizona, namely Gosar, to say that and to fail to recognize how our people were traumatized. And to still use that today, and also for McCain to put it in the National Defense Bill to remind us that military people forced us on a reservation, and to bring that illness back of how we were forced on the reservation, and how the American way has not come back to solidify what the future would be, and how all the promises were broken and what would happen next has never come to terms with all nations. But by doing this, it reflected those days, causing our people to be afraid what tomorrow's going to be. But as you said earlier, and as my colleagues have been saying here, leaders, is that what has happened here has affected Indian country and the United States itself. So from the world view, we are all being watched on account of this action that was taken. And so the repeal is the answer, a simple answer to solving this issue and building a better relationship, more of a commitment, more of a partner with the Indian tribes of this country. Because those people from Arizona that leads here in Congress, their perception is way off base and misleading. And to tell another point of view of how Native people are and not knowing the true facts really violates who we are. And so, Congressman, Grijalva, I just want to say, with all the work that we've been doing, I really appreciate it, because we are creating a new tomorrow. We are creating a new beginning. But we're going to need the help of Congress in order for that to happen. This crossroad, if this bill remains, then everything else is destroyed, because our religion is embedded in our language, in our ceremony, in our identity. And once Oak Flats is given away, and the subsidings occur, this holy place will no longer be. So, as we're taught in school, the United States was founded on freedom of religion and freedom to speak. And yet, we are being denied, the first people of this country. So I ask that I do every year with you. Thank you. Thank you for the continuing support. Thank you for the continuing fight. Thank you for the continuing education. And most importantly, thank you for your belief on life, for all our people, for everyone that is in this world. So thank you, Mr. Grijalva. Thank you very much.
The next person, God, see how long we've been at this? I mean, when you introduced me to this, she was a young little girl. Nayland Pike is now beautiful, strong young woman who is one of the leaders of this fight. We're all very proud of her. And she's a San Carlos Apache Youth Tribal member and member of the Apache Stronghold. Naylene, floor is yours.
First of all, I want to say thank you here, Sean. Tagote, she nalan pai konze, she San Carlos going you, she Chiraka, she Sanaya. Hello, my name is Nalan Pike. I'm enrolled in the San Carlos Apache tribe. I am Chiraka Apache from the Batonkahe band, and I am a Sanaya. You know, I come here and I'm very honored because I see these inspirational people I'm sitting next to today. And I'm sitting here too because I do represent the youth. And I'm representing the yet to be born. I see, you know, here today that we are going to make history, but it starts now because all that has been done to us as Native people in the past, you know, being the genocide, it's still happening today and it's going on right now. As a young girl, you know, being taught through generations from my grandfather, Winston Ozzie, my mother, to me, through these generations, as Apache, as Inna, and as Indigenous, we learn from generation to generation through oral history. My culture and who I am, you know, going back to Oak Flat, being raised as a little girl, going there and pray to see the life that it has. And in these pictures beside me, you can see that. You see the life that it gives. But to corporations like Resolution Copper, that means nothing. And the thing that I don't understand as a young girl, the thing that I question is how can leaders today in our country let that happen? Because today, right now, yes, I am a youth, and I had to stand up for those yet to be born because our past generations couldn't, our leaders couldn't. But it starts now for that to change. It starts today for our leaders in this country and within our local places and within our states to make these decisions for a better tomorrow. I look at Oak Flat and I go there every time with the fear of it being taken away. And as a young girl, I know that I am going to continue to fight to protect this place and continue to fight for all sacred sites in North America and in this world. Because as a girl, I know that one day I will become a mother. I know that I will have children, and I need to teach my children those traditions and the culture as being Apache and teach it to them so that they can teach their generations after them. But that will be gone if these places are taken, if these places are destroyed. Because as Apache, as Indigenous, and as human beings, we have a connection to Mother Earth, Nagosan. We go to her, you know, she keeps us alive. And as a woman, we need to stand up to that. As a woman, we need to stay together and fight for Mother Earth because she is our mother. And that is disrespecting us. And as Indigenous people, this is our original place on this land. And people don't understand that. People don't understand that we exist today, that our culture is still here, that we're still alive. They think we don't exist. They think that they killed us off. But we're here. We're all standing here, and we're sitting in front of you, and we're sitting in front of everyone. As Apache and as a young girl, I look at tomorrow for a better tomorrow. I look at it, and I will continue to fight. You know, this is my third time here being in Washington. The first time was for the bill S339, and I did a written testimony. And then the second time was in front of the Capitol in July. And those two, those made a huge, standing that we are going to continue to fight. But because we didn't push hard, and that's why we're still here, and we're going to continue to come back if this does not change. We're going to continue to come back for those yet to be born. The one thing I do want to say is that to the indigenous people, our ancestors died for us to live today, for us to exist today, through all the genocide, through all of the rape, through all of the bad things, the assimilation, through all these different acts and treaties that were said to happen, but continue not to happen. We're still here. We're still wearing our traditional outfits. We're still here speaking our language. And that is one thing I'm proud to say. I am proud to be indigenous, and I will continue to fight for Oak Flat. Oak Flat is the place of sacredness. It is the place of life. It is the place of who I am and our identity as Apache people. Who are we without Oak Flat? Who are we without these sacred places? It's not just Oak Flat. This is not just an Apache fight. This is an American fight because it affects all people. This, right now, Oak Flat sets a precedent for all sacred sites. If this place is destroyed, this could happen to all sacred sites like Mauna Kea in Hawaii, Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, Bear Airs, Utah, Black Hills, South Dakota, Mount Graham, Arizona, Loop 202, Modoc, South Mountain in Arizona, Keystone XL pipeline in Canada that will go through all the way to Oklahoma, Mount Taylor, New Mexico. And so many more sacred sites are going to be destroyed if we do not stand up and fight today. If our Congress people, if our senators, our House representatives stop and continue to make the right decisions for those yet to be born, these places will be protected. But it's up to you. It is up to you to stand up for the people. You are here as leaders to stand up for the youth, to stand up for the people and the yet to be born. And you guys need to make that right decision to protect these sacred lands. Because if these sacred lands are gone, who are we? What will we have? Mother Earth will be gone, and what will we live off of? Money? No, it will not keep us alive. It is us today to start, and those yet to be born to start to stand up. And I am standing up right now in front of you saying I will not let these corporations destroy my homes, but it's up to you to take that next step for us. Ahia Ashant.
That was pretty good. Thank you very much. Let me introduce a ranking member for Native American Affairs Subcommittee of the Resources Committee, Dr. Raul Ruiz, and extend to him the opportunity to make any comments. We just finished with the panelists and their comments, and Doctor, after your comments, we'll have an opportunity to open it up for some questions and let people leave at a reasonable time today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Congressman Grijalva, Raul Tocayo. It's always a pleasure to see our youth stand up so strong and speak from the heart. The language of the Mexica people is Nahuatl, and Nahuatl is the language of flower and song, because it was spoken poetically and written beautifully with different colors to also represent different phonetics and meanings. And you have just spoken with flower and song, and that has touched a lot of our hearts. I can see your seeds and your words being planted in a lot of people here who shook their heads and wiped their tears and felt empowered by your words. And I like that spirit, and I encourage you to continue to grow that spirit, because we need more of that in our nation, from all sectors of our communities. I support your right to your sacred lands because it is more than just property, which oftentimes this society looks at land as ownership and property and profit. It is a whole different concept in Indian country, and I understand, I get it. It is a connection to history, to identity, to our existence and wellness and well-being. It is part of our DNA, and it is what nourishes us, and also it is part of our creation stories and who indigenous people are as a people. And to violate the sacredness of our sacred lands is to harm all of us as a society. Because I was told a story by an elder who was teaching us about harmony and working together and the diversity of Indian peoples and all peoples in the Americas. And he picked up a corn with different colored kernels. And he said, these are the different colors of the corn, but we're all connected to the core. And what is that core? What binds us is that Mother Earth, is the land that nourishes us. And so I understand and I support fully your right to, and being the voice of so many people. And what I like to do as a representative and an advocate for people who don't necessarily have a voice is I consider myself simply a megaphone that amplifies their voice. And that's what you're doing today. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Representative Michelle Lujan Grisham, New Mexico, a strong and effective representative of the 22 pueblos?
Correct.
22 pueblos in New Mexico, and
Tribes and pueblos.
tribes and pueblos. And with that, let me thank her for joining us and afford her the opportunity to make some comments.
Thank you very much, Chairman Grijalva, and apologize that I'm here at the tail end of my colleague, Congressman Ruiz's remarks, because I appreciate the passion in which he represents all Indian nations and Native American tribes, and I think he does a very effective job as ranking member, and appreciate his leadership very much. And I'm actually just delighted to do the same, is to tell you thank you, because having as many individuals and as many tribes engaged in protecting sacred lands, particularly in the way in which Oak Flat has been, it is so terrible to have that rider on a bill and to take such a giant step backward. And to put that in perspective, certainly for me, my very first piece of legislation, both passed as a member of Congress, was returning sacred sites to Sandia Pueblo, who resides in my district. If every member was paying attention, whether or not they have native lands inside their districts or not, they certainly do in their states, took the opportunity and had the opinion that restoring those sites was not only appropriate and your right as a sovereign nation, but is the only way to protect the significance of most of those archaeological areas. And we certainly do it in so many other contexts. The fact that we don't do it in what I consider a priority environment in Indian country, I'm actually so angry, I think the term, I'm outraged. And to look for a way to provide immediate redress by being a co-sponsor of this bill and joining in the leadership of Chairman Grijalva is really important to me. And having you here Because I think sometimes when we've been wronged, particularly in an institution that not everyone is, and members of both sides aren't always proud of, in that we get stonewalled and find ourselves voting on legislation that we don't really like, but it's the only way to move anything forward in an area where the active compromise has been more negative than positive, and it shouldn't be. It doesn't have to be that way. That having you here really does make a difference. Because if we don't show our strength and unity on these issues, it's too easy for more members of Congress to find ways to strip away these protected sites, or to fail to recognize that sacred sites ought to be returned to the sole jurisdiction of pueblos and tribes. And so I didn't want to miss this opportunity to also give my warm and professional regards to everybody who's here, to congratulate the sponsor for his, not just in this case, but every case where he is clear to be a champion and to call out wrongdoing of policymakers and the federal government, which need to be held accountable. And so for me, my presence today, because you already know, you have me at hello for all the right reasons. You're welcome. And thank you for making this, creating significance in my state and in my community, and for honoring me with respect and dignity. I don't come at this in the same way that Congressman Ruiz does. I did work in my state for 30 years representing and advocating for elders, and the lessons I learned, more than the lessons that we all do that are so valuable and important from our grandparents and our parents. But Indian elders paved the way in New Mexico for one of the most dramatic shifts in funding and investments in community care, so that no one has to go to a nursing home, and particularly that members and Indian elders don't have to be lifted from their communities against their will, and often against the will of the families, but who have no options or choices, to a place where everything is foreign, most importantly their language. They made a huge sacrifice for a couple of years and refused or didn't ask for any investments in their own programs, so that we could advance programs where there was stronger legislative leadership, because Indian country is in rural New Mexico often, and we didn't have the right kind of presence or advocates. But we created a coalition so that all of those other legislators and all those non-tribal communities committed that after the first two investments, or first investment, they would only rally around and would refuse to accept any investments in their own programs until we made Indian country whole. And New Mexico was the first place to have Indian country adult daycare, specific elder housing, home and community services, and assisted living in Indian country that's completely culturally appropriate and sound. And we're going to keep building that, and I'm very proud of those efforts, but that really came from the wisdom and sacrifices of Indian elders. And now I want every member of Congress to recognize those sacrifices and to put, to make whole all of these. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. And before we have an opportunity for some questions, or an opportunity to kind of wrap this up, we're so happy to be joined by the Honorable Fawn Sharp, President, Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians, a distinguished attorney, human rights, indigenous rights, and a leader on many issues. I know you were at another hearing. So glad you could join us. Floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity and the leadership present in the room today. I want to offer a few remarks on behalf of the Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians. We represent a very large geographical area from Alaska to California, Nevada, up to Montana, 57 tribal nations. I first became engaged in this issue 4 years ago with Chairman Rambler, and as I delved into the issue and started to share what was happening with our tribal leaders, we became a formidable force with lockstep with San Carlos Apache. To put it lightly, many of the things that we saw happening at that time shocked the conscience. I started to do some research into the company Rio Tinto. I found out that they had been sued under the Alien Tort Claims Act for committing acts of genocide outside the United States. It's a statute that allows for someone to be sued, a corporation to be sued in the United States for committing acts outside of the United States. That complaint was upheld. It was appealed through the Ninth Circuit. In the meantime, a case went before the United States Supreme Court that ruled the Alien Tort Claims Act cannot be applied to corporations, only to individuals. At that point, a motion was made to dismiss the case against Rio Tinto. But what that told me was, as well as our leaders in the Northwest, this is a company that will stop at nothing, not only desecrating the environment, but very precious lives of Indigenous people on a very large scale, to the point where courts would deem it committing acts of genocide and war crimes. So that's what we're dealing with, and that was one of the reasons we became so engaged in this issue. Fundamentally, when this bill was passed, we saw the press releases coming out of the various offices stating that there will be access to these religious sites so as long as it's safe. Now, that told us that there's a condition and an expectation at some point in the future it's no longer going to be safe and there's no longer going to be access. That is not religious freedom. That is taking away unilaterally over the objections of not only the San Carlos Apaches, but tribes across the country vehemently opposing this. Every member of Congress has a sworn duty to uphold the Constitution of the United States and treaties with tribal nations. They do not have the luxury to ignore it at the expense of lives, at the expense of souls, of not only today's generation, but future generations forever. Once that's gone, there's no way of restoring it. That site that has existed from the beginning of time, when the Creator called the San Carlos Apache people to that stronghold in that place, is gone, lost. Only stories could be told through generations. That's not right, it's unconscionable, and it's wrong. And we stand strong in support with San Carlos Apache, the 57-member tribes of the affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was a lot of good things at this hearing, and I got a lot of great comments, and I want to thank all of you. I appreciate, Madam President, the point about we're dealing here with an entity that is horribly, horribly bad as a corporation. Wherever they've been, they've left a trail, and it has and left a legacy that is bad for people, bad for the environment, and bad for the spirit of this country and wherever they've been. And so it's also a fight about that. But center to it, and from the beginning, it was a sacred site in Oak Flats, and it continues to be that. And I think the broad support, not just from Indian country, but more and more, as Winsler said, from all over, regardless of where people come from, support for this is growing. I thought, and I speak for myself, I thought what was done to stick that rider in the middle of the night after it couldn't pass here in the House, and it hadn't even gone to a hearing in the Senate, to put it into a bill that we must pass as a nation and as a Congress was cowardly. Nothing less than. And that needs to be reversed. I think one of the reporters asked me, well, why aren't you, kind of chasing windmills? It's not going to happen. I have, based on discussions with all of you, discussions with the people from the Stronghold, and certainly my discussions with the esteemed chairman, Mr. Rambler, I have a strong sense we're going to win this one. And as the momentum continues to build, I think that members of Congress that are finding out for the first time what occurred are shocked. I think members of Congress that have been enablers are embarrassed. And that's a good way to have the enablers embarrassed. And And so when we go forward, we continue to pick up names. We're going to make a real effort. Your presence here and talking to all of us, respective colleagues, is very important. And that's how we kept it off twice, and that's how we're going to win it again. And I want to thank you. We'll have an opportunity to talk with each other. We're kind of on a deadline, and now that my colleagues are here, I want to thank them very much, Betty as well, Tony, for showing up and being part of this. We will send, and the 1.5 million petitions today, that's amazing. And we will make a lot of noise about that. And to all of you, thank you so much. Uplifting, powerful, and I think we can't lose sense of this, that it's, usually we have discussions here about policy and the nuance and the debate about that. This is a fundamental spiritual issue, and because it's that, it's very strong. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Toma. Ya te di una, la tiraste.
Sí, la otra, dale a la...
No, ya. La huellita, la huella.
Put in my scrapbook. You kidding me?
Cuando me muera lo va a sacar, va a llorar.
Ahí con mi
Está-
tequila.
Ay, ching-